Hello again from Metro Manila, the Philippines, Southeastern Asia. Probably already before the middle of September 2018 will start the second last parliamentary session of the current Canadian Federal Parliament, and expect to see and hear and watch a lot more partisan fervor, or at least pretended partisan fervor, in its debates. According to the recent opinion polls, the Liberals seem to be narrowly ahead of the official opposition party, the Conservatives, and of course the Conservatives, or at least their most partisan and passionate and power-hungry members and supporters will try just about anything they can, at least in terms of publicity stunts, in terms of profoundly partisan videos and Facebook messages, Twitter messages, and so forth, television programs, television advertisements, television interviews, and so forth, and campaign videos to try to win over those possibly floating and uncertain Canadian voters who basically hold the balance of power. If there are only a few percent separating the two main political parties of Canada from each other, the election's outcome is anybody's guess. And the sad thing is then that in this partisan rhetoric and struggle to beat the other main party, often the ordinary Canadians' interests are forgotten. And often, and of course this happens in many other walks of life, let's face it, those who try to get power and or to keep it offer selective parts of the truth, the ones that are designed to make their group, in this case their political party, look better than the other one. So for example, Conservatives can, or some of them anyway, can accuse Liberals of being fiscally irresponsible because they have failed to balance the Canadian federal budget, but they want the voters to forget the fact that as recently as in the fiscal year 2009 to 2010, when their party was in power under its previous leader and the previous Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper, the government ran a budget deficit of over $55 billion. And in fact, in the fiscal years 2008 to 2013, the government accumulated federal budget deficits worth over 130 or over 140 billion dollars. While in the fiscal years 1997 to 2007, Canada actually enjoyed consecutive budget surpluses, and for almost all that time, in fact until February 2006, the Liberals were in power federally, first under Jean Chrétien until he retired in December 2003, and then under Paul Martin Jr. until he had to resign following his election defeat, and the narrow election victory of Conservatives under Stephen Harper. Expect Conservatives to accuse Liberals of having failed to persuade the current US President Donald Trump of the desirability of the continuation of NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. Expect them to hammer the ruling Liberals over the worsening relationships between Canada and Somalia and some other countries, of the failure to solve effectively enough the Canadian refugee crisis, of course over the federal carbon tax and its alleged negative economic impact through rising prices and lost jobs. And expect them, of course, to hammer the Liberals over the legalization of recreational marijuana use, while it seems that a significant number of even Conservatives would eventually have legalized it. They would have wanted a transition period whereby especially the young people and possibly children, even young adults, would have been educated about the dangers of frequent drug use, where the law enforcement officials, police officers, judges, and others would have been trained to deal more effectively with the criminal use of drugs. I mean, their illegal sales and then the various homicides and attempted homicides and beatings and robberies that have taken place in order for the narcotics trade to continue and in order for many chronic drug addicts to obtain more drugs and then to avenge alleged or even real betrayals in these informal and illegal drug trades. Expect at least some of the more partisan conservatives to hammer the liberals on their alleged failure to improve the city's living standards and livability. Expect them to claim that the liberals have failed in their economic policies regarding the lowering of unemployment and over a host of other issues. Expect them to claim that once the conservatives come into power with a workable majority, the government will soon become more ethical, more moral, more efficient, more businesslike, more concerned about the ordinary Canadians' well-being. It will solve those problems, whether the refugee crisis, whether the environmental problems, the deficit problem and debt problem, although both are clearly smaller, much smaller than those of the United States, for example. So it's going to be a highly partisan, highly noisy, probably highly divisive session. Hopefully I'm wrong in this gloomy prediction.